All right, we're gonna do a mix up on the normal style here. Normally Joe's the MC, but we decided to flip a coin in the back room here. Um, Today we're going to be doing a webinar walking through the Halo PSA and the Auvik Better Together story around things like why proactive approach matters, around that single pane of glass and the power of combining both pieces of technology, wrapping up with everybody's favorite topic, maximizing profitability and improving those implementations and having some tips to take away. I don't want to spoil the introduction, but we are joined today by Harry, a very talented MSP person that I have gotten to meet in this journey along the way. But before I do that, let's jump into a round of intros. Joe, if you want to start us off, go to Harry, and then I'll sign us off and get things going.
Yeah, of course. So, hi guys, Joe here from Halo. You might have seen me on the odd webinar here and there. They can't seem to get me out of this room. I'm here just to give you guys an idea of the Halo side of things and how things look from a Halo perspective in relation to asset management and Auvik. And I'm looking forward to tucking into this webinar. I'll pass it over to you, John, who can intro Harry. Or Harry, I'll pass it over to Harry.
I'll intro myself. There we go. So I'm Harry. I'm the technical director of Chalkline. We're an MSP in North London. We've been working with Halo for, I want to say, just over 4 years now. Auvik, just had a look. I had to actually find out, just over 5 now. So yeah, very much
Wow.
talking about how we're doing with the tools we've got, and how they're helping us unlock that next level of the business.
Wonderful.
Nice.
We were just saying in the back channel how appreciative we are of partners like you, Harry. And I know with the audience here today, they're going to be really appreciative of just your inside tricks, your inside tips, and the value you've gotten along the way. I'll finish it off with my introduction. I'm John Harden. I'm director over here at Auvik with strategy and tech. I'm really here to help, maximize the power of both of our tools. We have a lot of loving customers over here at Auvik that love HaloPSA. And I know when Joe and I got together, the same conversation could be said reversed. And so we really wanted to get in today and talk about maximizing the value. If you're only using one or you're only using the other, we are going to take a moment here. I'll have Joe give maybe a brief overview of what HaloPSA is, and then I'll do the same. But then we're going to jump right into the meat of the topic. So, Joe, what's the elevator pitch? Give me a little bit about HaloPSA, as if I've never heard about it.
Yeah, of course. So to describe Halo, it's a very all-encompassing solution. So it starts off with service desk and ticketing, and then there's other features involved within Halo, so such as project management or task management, time tracking and billing, asset and inventory management, CRM and sales pipeline, self-service portals, reporting, dashboards. It's a very broad solution. The only big USP with Halo is everything's included under one package. That's our big difference. We give everything in the one pricing plan for the system, and you don't have to pay anything additional for any extra features, which is quite nice. That's my elevator pitch, John. Over to you.
I love it. I'm here over at Auvik representing kind of our whole suite of offerings. Auvik for the longest time has been known for our network management technology. We'll be spending a lot of time talking today. But Auvik is a platform built for IT's managed service. Wow, get it out here. Managed, managed service providers who are looking to kind of streamline their IT operations. We provide visibility into the network, the SaaS, the endpoint, the server, especially going to be an interesting conversation around the assets today. But I don't like really talking too much about it when we have a special guest here who really knows it better. But Joe, let's give Harry a chance here. Tell us a little bit about Chalkline. What makes Chalkline different too, Harry? We'd love to know more about you before we jump in.
Sure. So what can I say about Chalkline? We are an MSP, very much Microsoft focused. We've been going about 9 years. I guess what we try and do and what we try and do differently. We like to talk about kind of that enterprise grade solution for our clients. I am known for being a pain in the ass to a lot of our suppliers or our partners because I don't like settling for things that other people might. And we like to really use, kind of squeeze whatever we can out of our tools. Make sure that we're getting we're automating what we can. We're not doing things. We're not kind of accepting things because that's what everyone does. We kind of like to break that mold, and do things better. And that tends to be more efficient business, more profitable business, happier clients, happier staff. So there tends to, except for lots of Zoom calls back and forth and lots of feature requests and lots of writing up, it tends to be quite fun as well.
Thank you. I think it's just helpful to know the context and where we're coming from. Not every MSP is the same, and there's so many different approaches to it. But I think, Harry, a lot of the reason that you're here today is just a lot of the way that you think about things is proactive. The way that you really have designed Chalkline is around that proactive approach, and so that's our very first bullet we'll dig into today. I would love to hear first from Joe. The HaloPSA opinion on those proactive alerts. I know it's a super powerful platform when it comes to the ticket management and ticket handling. So give me a little rundown, and then maybe Harry, give us your input after Joe.
Yeah, of course. So proactivity with ticketing, I think, is very, very integral. The first one is obviously a reduction in downtime for customers. Once you've done that, or once you are more proactive with your ticketing experience, reducing downtime is very important. And that, on the other hand, improves kind of customer satisfaction, which is very integral towards your business, keeping clients happy and things like that. It also supports kind of SLAs and KPIs when you do reduce downtime due to being more proactive. And there's features in Halo you can leverage within ticketing, such as event management, for example. It's a fairly new feature we've released, which is where with something like, for example, Auvik, we could choose to change the webhook URL in Auvik to a different kind of URL, /API/incoming event/process, to effectively trigger a separate endpoint which will run event rules against it. So we can create event rules to kind of calm down the amount of alerts being created from Auvik, or maybe do something in relation to that to ensure that you're actually getting the correct, alerts into your ticketing system directly into your main support queue instead of having loads of noise coming in as well. I just jumped straight into a very granular point there, but going back to the more kind of broad aspects, data-driven insights are very important as well. So if you are kind of looking to be more proactive, it allows you to create better data-driven insights from the responses you are receiving. And proactivity is very important through automations as well. It also enables better resource planning for your team. If you are being a bit more proactive about things, you can allow yourself to prepare for the future a bit better, knowing which resources are available for which areas of ticketing, because you're not receiving a lot of noise through the automations you have enabled. But enough kind of on the Halo side of things. I'm very interested to hear what kind of Harry Boyne's thoughts are on proactive approaches with Auvik and Halo.
Yeah, so I mean, we use alerts through a lot of our integrations. Obviously, Auvik being quite a key one, where we want to make sure that we are very aware of what's coming in, and really when things go down, making sure we've got tickets quickly, so we can correlate them with what's going on. I mean, one of the things that's probably the most important thing is actually more about closing the alerts and opening them. It's all well and good. We've had solutions before where it will be triggered on an email, because that's a really easy, lazy integration. It's going to email in, and then what that means, we'll come in the morning, and an ISP did maintenance and 50 lines went down, 48 of them came back up. Now, if any MSP comes into 50 tickets, they're just going to go and close them all. If they know that the first 5 are there, no one has got time to go through each one. So you've either going to waste half a day working out which line's gone down, or you're going to really kind of replay things or panic or whatever you're going to do. It's a pain. Being able to make sure that there is an integration so that a ticket closes when an alert closes, or when the alert condition clears, makes a huge difference. It means that people actually listen to the noise rather than stick it in a file and don't ever touch it. So that's been a huge one for us. Being able to use rules, being able to use automation, site down, that's a P1. Some sirens need to go off, an email needs to go off, the TVs need to go red. Do we change the color of the lights? That sort of thing. It's making sure we're being very, very visible to everyone. But it can also be smaller things. So when I don't know, if it's a site down, we definitely don't need it to go to our first line team to start with. We probably want to be escalating really quickly because we know what it is. If there's certain things that can only be dealt with by certain teams, let's use ticket automation to handle that at the same time. I mean, the other point I would say when we talk about alerts, and I know we're going to talk about asset management a bit later, but when we do our kind of proactive reporting to our clients, one of the key things we talk about are tickets per asset. So you've logged 500 tickets last month, Mr. Customer. 490 of them came from this one switch. Well, Maybe it's a config issue. Maybe we need to fix that switch. Maybe it's too old. Maybe it needs to go. Either way, we need to be that's what we need to be talking about. It doesn't make sense to talk about your firewalls or your routers or your access points when that switch is clearly being really, really noisy, or there's something going on. Obviously, it could be a sign of something else. It could be another something further down the chain, but at least it tells us where we need to be looking. It centralizes the conversation.
No, I love that. I think it's a lot of great points in where there are different values of productivity. Any LPTs, any life pro tips for folks listening? Like as you're getting into the, setting up on how you're doing. Sorry, I'm kind of throwing you on the fly, so the answer can be no. But any little life hacks you'd recommend, Harry? Maybe a customer case story where you found some value there too.
I'm trying to think one through. They might come to me. In terms of ticketing, the problem with ticketing is it tends to be a little bit dry.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, I just threw that one on the fly for you, Harry. So bounce around in the noggin. We'll see where that shakes out. I appreciate you playing along with me, though. When we think about productivity here at Auvik, it's really about identifying those problems before they impact the users. I think that's one thing that most folks can talk about. I spent 8 years at an MSP prior to being over here at this organization. And one of the key things that I hated the most was answering the phone and on the other line telling somebody, oh, we'll look into that for you, but having no intel to give them a little bit of information before we jumped into it. Just, the last thing you want to do is be caught off guard. And I think the power of what you talked about, Harry, like cutting through the noise, I remember back in my old MSP as well, like if we just dropped 100 tickets and didn't auto close them with some of our setups between Halo and Auvik alerts, well, even if I did have the information and that customer called me, I wouldn't really be able to get down to the pinpointed areas to be able to be quick on my toes as a help desk technician. And so when I think about proactive, I think it's about, hitting those problems before they impact the users. And then probably really on that saving time and reducing downtime is probably the other stuff. It's just because it opens up where you can be proactive with your customer. It's not directly correlated, but just having that auto documentation, having that auto monitoring, having those auto alerts, giving back the time to the team. I think those are areas we look at opening up proactivity really for an MSP, maybe not to just be proactive in the network, but to be proactive in other areas of their business and other strategic areas that they want to focus on.
What as an MSP in general, what we tend to find and what's made a huge difference to us, and we have certain vendor conversations which went a certain way, and I couldn't work out why until afterwards when I kind of reflected on what we were talking about. We are very specific with who we work with in terms of vendors, and we're quite loyal and quite slow to change. Not as in when we need to, we will change, but we're not going to do things, off the bat. We're not going to do things that quickly. And so we've got quite a similar platform across all our clients, which means setup's quite easy, documentation's quite easy, certain conversations kind of could be quite generic between customers. And that's really the ideal MSP model, that you kind of can just drop a different client's name into the same conversation. And yes, obviously we do treat each client differently. And from a relationship perspective, they're all very important. And we want to make sure that they all feel loved. When we're talking about firewall rules or switch VLANs or anything, we want to be as generic as possible. Otherwise, that doesn't scale very well for us. And our techs won't ever be able to get to a good understanding of every network.
Yep. Yeah, I love it. And I love that. The more stories you can share like that will be powerful, especially for those listening, I know, because you learn from your peers. You don't learn from folks like Joe. I think you're pretty smart, but you don't learn from folks like us on the call. You learn from folks like Harry on the call. So thanks for sharing that. I made a promise to Joe. We're going to keep this thing on schedule. So we're going to jump into the next topic. The next topic is one that I'm near and dear to, around that single pane of glass, keeping all those assets into one visibility point. Harry, maybe we'll flip the script instead of Joe starting. We'll go with Harry, then I can come in, and then Joe, you round us off.
Go for it.
Let's talk about that single pane of glass. Let's talk about, I know we were chatting earlier about the warranties and the purchase info and having that all together, having all the assets together. You share that, just go ahead and continue to share some of the stories we were talking about before, if you're open for it.
Yeah. So, we moved to Halo having had a couple of experiences where we hadn't ever had that end-to-end setup. And what we then were really keen to implement, and Halo has done brilliantly, is have a quote that goes out from Halo or from an integration through Halo, we put a line item for Sonic Wall or any piece of hardware really, and we will go and put that on a quote. That quote will get signed. Then we do a purchase order from Halo, send that to the supplier. Kit turns up, we receive it in Halo. I'm going to stop saying that. We then, once we've received it, we then have a ticket to go and do all the build, like the setup, get everything ready. We then ship that, consign that out to the customer. We invoice it. And from the minute that comes into stock, we have an asset that's created. So previously, the asset would have been created by our RMM or by Auvik or by whatever integration at the time saw it. It's now created when the device actually exists in our world, when the serial number is first known to us. So the benefit of doing that in Halo, we go into the asset and we actually can see the name of the device, all of the technical information that's come in through the integration, but also it was ordered under sales order 1234. It was on this consignment. It was received on this date. So we produce in our self-service portal, we've got live reports our clients can see with all their assets, which includes switches, firewalls, things like that. And we can see on there the order number they placed it on and the date they ordered it. So when we talk about life cycle, it's not about, well, that device looks like you might have got it in 2016. It's you bought that device on the 22nd of February, 2016. It becomes a very specific conversation. Hopefully I haven't got any kit that old, but you get the point. So that's been a huge, it's a really nice way of adding transparency, and we'll talk about profitability and how that helps that as well in a minute. But yeah, that's been really helpful. And obviously, like I said before, in terms of tickets, being able to show tickets by asset through that same mechanism has been really helpful.
Yeah, I think that's super powerful, right? Like Auvik will only see that asset once it's on the network. But that's not when the life cycle, especially if you're looking at compliance requirements and trying to really build a very cyber resilient or cybersecurity focused approach. Like an asset doesn't begin when it's in the network. An asset begins right at the beginning of that purchase cycle, all the way through the destruction of the device. And so I can see where that's a powerful part of marrying that Halo and Auvik journey. The way that I think of it from an asset perspective is going to be that the journey starts with Halo, then Auvik identifies and kind of matches that data into the system. But Halo will always be that really powerful asset store. You've got everything centralized. Auvik only provides the network, the firewalls, the switches, the routers, and any of those critical devices under the infrastructure. But all those have to get there from somewhere. But the way I look at it is Halo is the asset system because it's all centralized, and we're more like the audit log. What's changed on that device? How are the configurations backed up? We're the more IT operations perspective. And Harry, you said something behind the stage that I liked a lot. Like, I live in HaloPSA when it comes to the high level details of all of my assets, running that central visibility. And then I jump into like the Auvik platform when I need some nitty gritty details around the network or when I'm troubleshooting a network piece.
Exactly that. And the other thing to point out, we're having this conversation here. Obviously we're not using Auvik for everything. Now, everything networking we are, but we also have our standard RMM. Mac monitoring, and you've got all these different tools that come in tune. So we're importing assets from all sorts of places. So we talk about a single pane of glass. It's also the other way around. That what I don't want to have is a conversation with my team where it's, well, if it's a network appliance, you're going to have to look on this system in this screen, and if it's not that, you start creating this stupid map. The team actually, I've got a sales team who I think they do know what Auvik is because we talk about it and we talk about its benefits, but they don't need to. Our clients don't need to. Our team, the tech team obviously need to when they want to use Auvik, but not when they're looking at the assets. And it's the same thing no matter which integration they're using. Some of the team don't have access to some of the systems we have, but they still see this information on the single pane of glass. That's where this is really important to us.
Yeah, I'll tell you right over to you. That's perfectly and well said, Harry. Like I didn't want my sales reps at Auvik when I was at an MSP. We didn't have Auvik then. It's been like 2008, 2010. But I wouldn't want them in my tools. And so I love that.
What's the worst that can happen?
That's the worst that happen. But go ahead, Joe. Like, give me your take on this. I'm super excited to hear your take here.
Yeah, so single pane of glass, I think, is integral for MSPs. You want to have that control room where every piece of critical information is in one place: tickets, assets, warranties, compliance statuses, client data, everything in that one single pane of glass. And that's where we come in quite nicely. And as you mentioned, from a high level perspective, it's good to use something like Halo. And if you did need to drill down on things in Auvik, completely understandable. We actually had a story Or an example of a client that was having like a recurring hardware issue. It was across their finance department, and instead of treating each of their tickets in isolation, they noticed a trend. So all the affected machines were there from the same batch purchased 2 years prior. So thanks to that, using reporting and a bit of asset management in Halo, they pulled up all the related devices, flagged their shared purchase date, warranty status, and usage patterns. And after that, they just export the report and made a bulk RMA request from that, which was quite important for removing further downtime, positioning themselves as a strategic partner, not just to help their customers. And obviously, renewal discussions turned into a full environment refresh after that, which was massive for them from like a new revenue perspective. That's the benefit of having all that information in one place using something like Auvik into Halo, which is quite nice. But yeah, consolidation's our thing, really. Bringing everything into one place as a single pane of glass, makes it a bit better from going to proactive from reactive, doesn't it? From the fixers out there to becoming an advisor is an important thing for getting, customer, I guess, safety, customer, trust.
No, I love that.
I was going to say as well, you talk about kind of putting all the data in one place and building that and helping, identify trends. There's then, the ever-growing AI conversation, and what can I throw my data into AI, and what can I do this, and what can I do that? And I am of the opinion that we're not necessarily there yet in terms of there's a lot of development that needs to go on, just generally in the world to make things, to make everything work even better. There's certain use cases that works really well on right now, but if you don't have clean data in a clean data source, then there's no point starting. AI is not going to be able to cleanse the data and review it and look at data and extract things all at the same time. So, now's a good time. Well, yesterday was the best time. Today's the next best to actually start making sure that data is really clean and something you can go and query and do trend analysis and things like that.
Absolutely. And AI is a bit of a buzzword at the moment, isn't it? Then I hear a lot of people go, "Oh, I want to do this. I want to use AI." And I'm like, "But what do you want to do?" And a lot of the time it can be done through automation. Yeah. Exactly that.
We got so close to making it through a webinar without saying the words AI. I don't think we've done one in the last year.
Isn't that the only keyword that people want to listen to these days?
Yeah.
No, but I think it's good. But that is a good point though, as you talk on assets, like, and you get into AI, it's like knowing where are all your assets, knowing where all your data is going to be critical for that journey. But we're going to stray away from that. That's a whole rabbit hole for a whole nother time. I'm excited about our final track here. And I think this is what most people are looking for. Like, how can I use both of these tools together to focus on profitability and focus on revenue? I'm happy to kind of be the last one on this track. I started last time, Joe. Let's talk you, then Harry, then me. We're kind of cycling it around.
Yeah. No, that works. I like the change as well. I think one of my points Harry will be able to add to as well. But the bottom line literally is profitability. It's not just about increasing your rates. It's about ensuring everything you deliver is kind of tracked effectively, build, optimized, making sure that everything is smooth. And that's where something like HaloPSA and Auvik coming together sort of pays off. One of the big hidden revenue leaks for MSPs is services being delivered and not billed. I mean, we all know that, it's not a secret. And when you link assets in Halo to contracts and billing rules, dynamic line items, you can make sure that every device, every license and service you manage is tied directly to a billing item. If you're monitoring, 100 devices for a client, but only billing for 85, that gap becomes visible almost instantly. And you can automate, automatically generate recurring invoices based on asset count, services rendered, time logged, so that nothing gets mixed. So it's quite important. Something like Auvik can help enhance this by monitoring networks and devices in real time. And I'm thinking that might lead on to a point from Harry, I'm sure, around asset management and billing in Halo.
I've got a simple success story there, haven't we? I mean, I was talking to you guys about it before, and we before we moved to Halo, we were doing billing semi-manually. It was very much, when we sold a client, we would, we're 20 users, right? Well, 20 users times user rate, whatever it was, and that was their bill. And we'd take a view every couple of months and just make sure it hadn't like tripled or doubled or anything. But in reality, it's not a significant. We weren't doing kind of those little bridges up. And we went through an exercise after Halo went live where we kind of asked the question of, well, we can now do dynamic billing. We can now link things and do billing how we should have done it in the first place. What's that going to look like? And we ended up having a bit of a sales nightmare because there was such a huge gulf for some clients. And what we found was actually, we weren't as on it as we could have been. And we have, if we're not automating it, we're never going to be that on it. So, we worked through and we went through each client, and it was a fair conversation of, well, it was an open conversation. It was go in the self-service portal, here's a direct link, you can see all of your assets, all your users. If they are not accurate, please tell us. And then the conversation was, well, you're currently paying for 20, but that list says 30. So, can we review that together? And we did. And as you can imagine, admin nightmare. But we went through each one, and we talked through clients. And the thing was, they're all quite understanding because our bills are itemized anyway. So it said 20, but you're getting 30. So this obviously isn't fair. So it was a very easy conversation to have. But we did, we went through that. It took about 3 to 6 months to kind of get that working, to get through each client. And we wanted to do it in a respectful way where it wasn't your bill's changing tomorrow afternoon, here's the list, get over it. We wanted to kind of engage with them all, and we spent time, and we did it respectfully. But we believe, we did some reports the other day, and it's easier to do it in hindsight now, but we found an 18% increase in revenue, which is obviously straight to the bottom line on these line items where we were just under billing. There was money on the table. And, obviously unlocking that a few years ago has really helped grow the business, make us more profitable, and make sure we're, doing the sensible thing as the business continues to grow.
Yeah, and I think in this case, right, clarity equals cash, right? Like, just knowing what you have means that you're not leaving money behind. And it's easy, right? Well, easier to have that conversation. I remember, again, back at my MSP, we'd have our annual increases, and it's, what have you done for me lately? And this isn't a what have you done for me lately. This is what do you have, and this is what we're supporting. And it's just a little bit different of an approach. I really liked, Harry, how you were able to use those assets, integrate it into Halo, to then go back to the customer, make sure that information's right and valid, so that then you could come around and have that conversation later to say, okay, we agreed this is right and valid. We've been underbilling you. And so that approach was really tactical. I will say that in general, where I know MSP margins are really constantly under pressure, when you can unlock new cash streams like this by not doing something new, just truing up what you're already doing and creating revenue, that's super helpful. I'll throw, we're down to the final 5 minutes, Harry. I asked you earlier, maybe your mind spun around, but I'm just curious to ask you a couple questions for the folks in the audience. Let's hear it from the MSP side, but if you were to do this again, setting up the Halo and Auvik integration, I think I know what your answer might be, but what would be some of the things you would do first, knowing, what you have now that you've used the tools a little bit longer?
If I was doing this again, I mean, I think we do it the same way we've done it. I mean, we did it a good way, but it's making sure that we have accounted for everything, making sure that in an ideal world the assets have come in first, things like that. What's annoying, we went live with Halo for procurement in the middle of 2022. So the most annoying thing we currently have is that firewall networking kit can last 5 years, sometimes longer, depending on the client. So sometimes I can't pull that through because I didn't have the system in place then. So I've got loads of assets that just would just free us, even for clients who were with us. So that's it's been a frustration point, but there's no real way of working around it. It's just get on there as quickly as you can, and that doesn't really work. No, I mean, apart from that, it's making sure that you understand what alerts come in. There is Auvik, you've got the new alerts that are now kind of coming out, and some are out and some are coming. And as that happens, making sure, in an ideal world, we'd start there and have some really clear alerts that get logged, because it's very easy to get, when a client goes down, if you've got 8 switches and 2 routers and a firewall and 20 APs and this and that and the other, you can easily get 40, 50 tickets. And one of the things that is coming with new alerts, I believe there's the upstream management, and
Question.
there's quite a lot of cool things that now in terms of internet connection tracking, and there's a lot more customization that we're going to have. So you know, that's going to be, well, that's probably my Christmas project already planned out. But you know, that will have hopefully a massive impact in what we have already, and that will, you know, that be even better than what we currently work with.
I love it. Yeah, if I hear it right, you know, the one big piece of tactical takeaway advice here is, you know, if you've got the integrations already set up, or that's one of the next things you're going to be doing in your list for the quarter or year, go look at that revenue opportunity. Go see what your billing looks like and see where the mismatched line items, that should be your deepest well to start digging in. Any sign-off notes, Joe? Anything you want to sign us off with today?
Well, I just around kind of like setting up, because I mean, I don't run my own MSP, so I can believe the amount of setup it took, Harry, to achieve what you guys had done. But one thing I hear quite a lot in the general grumblings from MSPs is around kind of retaining the right talent. It's more of a question for you, actually, Harry, around retaining the right talent in the industry, you know, young talent that's coming through from a hiring perspective. How I would first work out how best to do that. And it might actually pose a question to you, Harry. How would you suggest I would do that if I was starting up an MSP? Bit of an odd segue.
Yeah, very probably a little segue. No, I mean, we're at Chalkline, we're quite keen in the apprenticeship program. It works quite well for us in terms of kind of keeping the right people as they come in. And you know, what we've learned over the years is, you know, it's all well and good people coming in who are a second liner, but that doesn't mean they're a second liner to kind of, maybe it's our standards, maybe it's our tool set, maybe it's the vendors we work with, whatever it is, they're not necessarily aligned to us. And actually, you know, bringing someone in at that kind of more junior level who is eager to learn and eager to do the right things, and that sort of, it's been more personality based. I mean, it's the cliche that everyone now says, but
Yeah.
you know, you obviously, you need someone who can come in and understand tech quite quickly, or they're going to get very bored or very overwhelmed within a couple of days. On the flip side, you do need them to be able to kind of mold to the way we do things. You know, we have a very specific way we like to work. We know it's successful, and that's us. So, you know, and we do find when people come in, I mean, people often kind of go in, look at our KBs and go, okay, there's a lot of KBs there. Like, I need a few weeks to go and read them all. And, you know, obviously don't read them all, read a couple, and then, you know, you can search for them. You know, it's teaching people things like that, but it's all about that discipline. It's about communication. But yeah, just generally just kind of doing the right thing for the client, right client, for all clients, doing the right thing for our clients, you know, and making sure that we're helping them with their tech and doing a good job.
Okay, so that kind of helps me a lot there, John. My answer would be to start an apprenticeship scheme if I was starting MSP today.
I committed to it. We're 5 over. I'm gonna blame you, Joe. We were right there. No, it's kidding around. I think that was a great thing to add to the final closing notes. But you know, at the end of the day, I think MSPs, the summary here is, you know, there's a cash, or clarity leads to cash. Having more visibility is going to help you run the operation. And honestly, I think MSPs need more than visibility and ticketing. They need the tools that work together. And that's why, thank you, Joe, and thank you, Harry, because there is nothing more important than synergy in this community that we live in. And so I'm excited that we're able to share some real world use cases, some real world tactics, some real world value props here today on how MSPs can take Auvik and Halo and be better together. So thanks so much. Appreciate everybody for taking the time, and for everybody that attended.